Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going to zero in on a scene that our sources describe as, well, one of the most quietly devastating moments in contemporary cinema.
We're talking about that unexpected street encounter between Lee Chandler and his ex-wife, Randy.
We are. And it's a scene that's been, studied relentlessly by trauma psychologists, by film critics.
And I think the reason is that it delivers an emotional resolution that just completely defies the typical Hollywood script.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of scenes with high emotional stakes, you expect a confrontation
Right.
or a huge dramatic fight.
Or maybe a sudden cathartic reconciliation, a big hug, tears, all of that.
And this scene gives us none of that. It's something so much rarer.
It's a collision, a moment where two people are carrying so much truth, so much internalized grief, that words just can't contain it.
It is a masterclass in nonverbal storytelling. If you've seen the film, you know exactly what we mean. The air just gets sucked out of the room when they meet.
And if you haven't, all you really need to know is that these two people share a monumental tragedy, one that just completely fractured their lives, and of course, their marriage.
So our mission today is to unpack all those emotional layers, the deep psychology of trauma and closure. We're going to look forensically at the physical language that defines this moment.
We're going beyond the dialogue to really understand the coping mechanisms they're both demonstrating.
Okay, let's unpack this. We really have to begin with Lee, with his physical state before the encounter even starts. Because his posture is, it's a complete silent autobiography.
It really is.
He walks down the street with his shoulders slightly rolled forward, almost tucked into his chest. And the analysis defines this not as shyness.
Right, that's the critical piece of insight here. It's not shyness. It's
Wow.
not that he's nervous. This is profound emotional compression. It's the physical posture of a soul under just extreme, prolonged duress.
He moves like someone who wants to take up as little space as possible.
Exactly. He exists cautiously, almost apologetically. This self-minimization for Lee, it's a core survival mechanism. It's how he deals with the sheer weight of his past.
And his gaze, he's never really looking up, is he?
Never. He's sweeping the ground just a few feet in front of him. That physical focus, it just embodies the weight of unresolved guilt. The heaviness is literally written into his gait.
And this whole state, this carefully managed non-existence, it just shatters in an instant.
The second Randy calls his name. The moment he turns and sees her, we get this instantaneous micro-expression that confirms everything about his internal world.
Can you describe that for us? What do the sources really pinpoint in that split second?
It's a rapid-fire sequence. It's panic, then this deep sadness, and then just disbelief. All of it compressed into less than a second. His jaw tightens, his lips part slightly.
That's the body's raw, physical response to shock.
Precisely. It's instinctive. It happens long before the brain has even formulated an emotional strategy of how to deal with this.
So that initial reaction tells us something absolutely fundamental about his psychological state.
It does.
The analysis suggests he's not ready for this conversation. And maybe he never will be. Why is that state of being unready so central to his whole character?
Because for Lee, readiness would imply he's processed the trauma, or that he's allowed himself the emotional bandwidth to move on. And our sources are clear, his coping mechanism isn't about processing at all.
It's about suppression.
It's about suppression and containment. So seeing Randy, it means the container has failed. He can't be ready because being ready would require him to acknowledge the full scale of the loss, which he's still, years later, fighting every single day.
And that sets up this profound, visible contrast. Because if Lee is all about emotional compression and containment,
Randy is the complete opposite. She is defined by her emotional overflow.
she steps toward him, and you can see this mix of incredible courage, but also extreme fragility.
Yes. She's clearly rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times, and the fact that it's happening now so spontaneously just overwhelms her. While he's trying to compress himself, she's physically leaning forward.
Trying to close that emotional distance.
Exactly. But there's a tension in her posture, too, isn't there?
There is. She's leaning in, but her hands stay so close to her sides, almost glued there.
She's trying to physically hold herself together while she's already just falling apart internally. You can hear the tremor in her voice before the tears even start. She's moving toward connection, but she is barely anchored to reality herself.
The sources, they highlight a specific kind of pain on her face that goes beyond just regret. It's the pain of someone who has forgiven the other person Lee long before she's managed to grant that same grace to herself.
And that is such a critical psychological distinction for survivors of a shared tragedy. Her burden isn't just grief over what happened, it's this unbearable guilt over the rift that followed.
The idea that she should have handled it better or protected him more.
Right. So her emotional reaction, it's triggered not just by seeing the broken man in front of her. It's the search for the version of him she knew.
That's it. She's searching his face, looking for that old flicker of Lee, the one buried deep behind that wall of grief.
And when she sees it, even for a split second, that glimmer of recognition, that little moment of connection, that's what ignites the flood. That flicker just overwhelms her. Her breathing quickens, her eyes widen. She's mourning the ghost of the life they lost, and his presence makes that ghost terribly, terribly real.
Okay, let's pivot back to Lee. Because as Randi opens up, as she overflows, his reaction is the complete psychological mirror image. He closes down.
He shuts down, and it's so important to note that this isn't aggressive, it's not dismissive, it's purely protective.
You can almost see his defense mechanisms peeking in.
You can't. His arms stay completely still, his shoulders tense up, and you see his eyelids lower just slightly. It's as if he's physically trying to dim the emotional brightness of her vulnerability because it is just too intense for him to process.
He can only look at her for, what, a second or two at a time? Then he has to look away. Why is eye contact so dangerous for him here?
Eye contact, especially sustained eye contact, is the doorway to true emotional vulnerability. And the sources are very clear on this. Looking at her for more than a second threatens to just rip open a wound that he has spent years covering with this dense emotional scar tissue.
So he's built this fragile fortress of managed grief.
A very fragile fortress.
Wow.
That sustained connection, that's the battering ram that could bring it all crashing down in an instant.
So he is, in effect, fighting an internal war right there on the street.
He is absolutely controlling the internal collapse. He is fighting tears. He's fighting the urge to lean in, not because he's devoid of feeling. It's the opposite.
It's because he has too much feeling.
Exactly. The sources suggest he genuinely fears that if he allows even one crack to show, the entire carefully constructed wall he's hidden behind for years will just shatter completely.
This is where Randi's words become so critical. She starts her apology, and the analysis describes it as much more than regret. It's confession, surrender, and longing all at once.
And look at her nonverbal cues while she's confessing. She keeps touching her chest, the subtle, subconscious gesture.
To regulate her heart rate, maybe. Pain.
Yes. She's pleading for emotional acknowledgement. She needs him to know she never stopped loving the version of him that the tragedy erased. She needs him to see that her pain is just as real as his.
And Lee just cannot give her that acknowledgement. As she's speaking, his chin drops, his gaze falls away to the side, and his lips fold inward.
Which the sources call the universal sign of wanting desperately to speak but having no words.
Which brings up a fascinating question. Is his silence an act of resistance, or is it pure incapacity? A cynical reading might say he's holding on to his anger.
I think if we follow the psychological analysis, it points to something far more tragic. His trauma has fundamentally limited his emotional capacity.
So it's not that he doesn't want to connect with her.
No. It's that the specific emotional bandwidth required for that kind of raw, genuine connection, it's just been systematically destroyed. He doesn't have the psychological tools left to meet her where she is. His silence isn't deliberate cruelty, it's tragic incapacity.
And the most telling physical reaction, the one that says everything, happens when she pushes that boundary just a tiny bit.
When she expresses the possibility of any kind of future closeness.
His body just revolts.
Yeah.
Instantly.
We see this profound physical flinch. His shoulders actually jerk back, his breath catches, his eyes squeeze shut for a moment, and there's this tiny, almost imperceptible micro shake of his head.
That flinch is the moment of psychological truth, isn't it?
It is.
The source material is very clear. He is not rejecting Randi.
No, he is rejecting the memory of who he used to be. He's confirming in that moment that the man she loved is gone. And in his mind, he's the one who killed him off.
That's where this concept of self-erasure becomes his core tragedy. He believes he doesn't deserve connection. He doesn't deserve happiness or relief.
His trauma hasn't just happened to him. It has completely reshaped his identity into one that's defined by guilt and unworthiness. He survives by permanently limiting his capacity for any kind of joy.
And we see that conviction, that unworthiness, fully realized in his final expression to her, that tiny, broken smile.
That smile communicates so much more than any words could.
It's the ultimate boundary, drawn by internalized trauma. That smile says, I see you, I appreciate your kindness, but I cannot come with you.
It's a final gesture of care, but it's filtered through this overwhelming inability.
And even though he tells her softly, indirectly, that he can't, the sources suggest his eyes are telling a different story.
A counter-truth. That he wishes he could. He wishes his inner world wasn't just scorched earth. He wishes he could accept her love and meet her in that moment. But he can't. He's locked in orbit around his own past. He's perpetually trapped.
And that's why the scene ends not with anger, but with acceptance.
Right. Her tears and his stillness, it solidifies a farewell that is rooted in acceptance. Because grief and trauma have permanently reshaped the path of both their lives. There's nothing left to fight about. Only these profound truths to accept.
So if we connect all this detailed analysis to the bigger picture, the scene's genius is how it synthesizes these emotional realities that cinema so often just smooths over. It shows us trauma that cannot be undone, can only be carried.
And it portrays a love, Randy's love for the man he was, that survives even when the relationship itself is permanently gone and the man is fundamentally altered.
And maybe most critically, it shows that healing is so often uneven. It's asymmetric. Randi has done the work. She's moved forward, found some kind of peace. But Lee, he remains still, frozen in his self-imposed emotional quarantine.
It acknowledges the limits of our emotional capacity, a point so often missed in stories about overcoming adversity. Lee simply cannot give what he doesn't have the ability to access anymore. And that is a devastating, quiet truth.
Which brings us to the central philosophical idea here. The scene proves, I think definitively, that closure is not always shared. And that's a truth that so many people in real life live with every single day.
One person can forgive and move on while the other remains trapped, and there's just no mechanism for forcing that symmetry.
It's a profound and unforgettable depiction of the human condition. Guilt, grief, forgiveness, longing, all colliding in a silence that is, in the end, more powerful than any confrontation could ever be.
It leaves you just contemplating the sheer emotional gravity of choosing self-erasure as a path to survival.
So, what does all this mean for you, the listener? It means the true weight of Lee's tragedy is in his unwavering conviction that he has to erase his past self to survive the present. It leaves you contemplating that devastating calculation. What price do we pay when we choose safety and isolation over the difficult, dangerous work of connection?
A powerful note to end on. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.